Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Patient Service Recovery 101. Before we get started, I want to remind you all to mute your microphones. Additionally, we will be answering questions at the end of the presentation. Feel free to submit any questions in the chat or Q&A at any point in the presentation. Even if you can't make it until the end, just submit your questions and we'll make sure someone reaches out to you with an answer. All right, and with that, let's go ahead and get started. I'm your host, Lauren Parr, the Product Marketing Manager at RepuGen, a healthcare reputation management platform that assists healthcare providers in improving their online reviews, patient acquisition, retention, and engagement. I'm also a contributing editor at the Forbes Business Communication Council. For today's webinar, we'll be focusing on the basics of patient service recovery. Specifically, you'll learn the importance of patient service recovery, the benefits of implementing a service recovery process, the steps you can follow to implement a service recovery process, and finally, guidelines to follow in a service recovery process. Before we jump into the main agenda, let's just go ahead and start off by defining service recovery. So service recovery is the process used to recover, keyword recover, dissatisfied patients by identifying and fixing the problem or making amends for the failure in customer or clinical service. When problems with patients occur at your healthcare organization, your team must be prepared with a service recovery program designed to turn a displeased patient into a happy and loyal one. So you may be asking, how exactly does patient service recovery work? Well, a successful recovery process starts with giving all of your patients a way to voice how their experience with your practice went. From there, listening to your patients' feedback is vital because that's where you'll be able to pinpoint any negative feedback that comes in. With any negative feedback that you inevitably receive, your practice should make an effort to rectify the patient's negative experience by communicating with them in an understanding manner about what went wrong and assure them that you will address their concerns. That way, patients feel that their feedback is being dealt with effectively, and they will be more likely to be retained at your practice. So now that we know what service recovery is and an overview of how it works, let's talk about what the benefits are of having a patient service recovery program. To start off, there are three main benefits of patient service recovery, which are improved revenue, improved reputation, and improved retention. Let's start with examining the revenue benefits of patient service recovery. So according to a Harvard Business Review study, it costs 5 times more to replace a customer than to retain one. So for example, let's say a patient at your practice thought that the wait time was just far too long to see their physician, and in part, they found a new physician for their healthcare needs. In that scenario, you'll not only be losing out on the revenue that you could have incurred if you were able to retain that patient, but you'll also have to spend more money on marketing to find another patient. To be exact, 5 times more to replace a patient than to retain them. But having a patient service recovery program in place will help you retain more unhappy patients and in part save and improve revenue. And another study found that around 7% of patients switch providers due to negative patient experiences on an annual basis. 7%, that may sound like a small number to some, but for health systems, this translates to nearly 100 million in annual revenue loss. So any healthcare practice that utilizes a service recovery program to retain patients can avoid that substantial revenue loss. If you run a healthcare business, customer service and recovery should be one of your main priorities. After all, without customers, no business would exist. And keeping them happy is the key to running a successful, profitable healthcare business. And now that we've covered revenue, let's talk about how patient service recovery affects your reputation. As you may already know, all practices receive negative feedback on occasion, especially nowadays when anyone can leave a review online. But if you have an unhappy patient that takes out their frustration through a negative public review and you don't do anything to resolve the situation, then you'll likely receive more negative reviews for the same issue. Hear that more patients are unhappy with your practice and even see, again, a loss in your revenue. And having unhappy patients at your practice raises the risk of a negative grapevine effect. According to the CAPS Care Improvement Guide, more than half of the patients who had a bad experience will not even complain to the practice. Let's think about that. Half of them don't even go to the practice and complain. However, 96% of patients that had a bad experience will go on and tell at least 10 other people about their experience. And most of them will express their displeasure online in your online reviews as well. So when you do not tend to your unhappy patients' feedback with service recovery before they have a chance to go on and express their negative feedback to the world, it will not only negatively impact your revenue, but it will also negatively impact your reputation and your online reviews. And finally, let's talk about the benefits to your retention with a patient service recovery process. So it is possible to convert an unhappy patient to a loyal advocate with a little attention, reassurance, and practice improvements. When a patient's issue is addressed effectively, it builds trust and appreciation with that patient. In fact, a phenomenon known as the service recovery paradox says that when we handle patients' concerns or complaints quickly, they tend to be even more satisfied than a patient who experienced no problems at all. That's kind of crazy, but if you implement a timely service recovery process and successfully retain a patient, you'll see that that patient ends up being more loyal to you because you took the time to address their concerns. They'll see that you truly care about them. So, because of this, they're more likely to continue going to your practice and may even become your best advocate in expressing how great your services are to others. So now, with all of this in mind, the next question is, how can you start implementing a patient service recovery process? Well, to start, you need to give your team the right tools to implement a new culture of service excellence, and so that everyone in the organization can work together on this service recovery process. According to Dr. Wendy Libov, a national expert on service recovery in the healthcare industry, service recovery is a fundamental business practice everyone should employ, especially in an era where reimbursement hinges on patient satisfaction. She says that service recovery is everybody's job. But why is it so difficult to implement? Well, typically the biggest challenge to patient recovery is changing the culture of service by providers. In healthcare, certain problems are very common. Surgeons get delayed in the operating room, flu season packs the appointment schedule, implementing a new online appointment system can inevitably cause service glitches, etc., and so on. No matter what the case is, you can prepare your staff with solutions for predictable problems and teach them how to offer and implement these solutions. In addition to these planned solutions, the patient outreach must be offered in a very customer-sensitive way so that you do not leave people with the impression that this problem is common or your staff behave like robots. And according to Dr. Wendy Libov, these 5 components are a must to handle patient complaints. The first component is an effective system for inviting and encouraging customers to give feedback. Second, implement guidelines for staff so that they are on board in performing service recovery. Third, employ empathetic staff skilled in service recovery as they are aware of the protocols and able to listen non-defensively, empathize, handle emotion, solve problems, and follow through to closure. Fourth, set clear protocols for handling customer complaints effectively. And fifth, finally, documentation and a clear feedback loop that channels problems revealed through service recovery into an improvement or problem elimination process. With those 5 components in mind, let's talk about how to implement them into a service recovery process. So in general, staff members need to have the authority to make decisions about handling complaints autonomously so that they can act quickly. Specifically, they need clarity about the extent of their authority to act on complaints without getting approval from managers, defined courses of action for the most frequent complaints, and a clear system of resource people, authority lines, and backup systems for dealing with unprecedented difficult situations. And from the patient side, there needs to be a way to give your patients a way to voice their concerns. When you do, you create a culture of excellence where everyone can express their opinion about how their appointment went and how the service they received was. This way, patients feel they are being heard and their concerns are being addressed. When negative complaints inevitably come in, you need a way to address them. According to the Agency of Healthcare Research and Quality, creating a system of complaint and redressal is one of the key components of recovery. You need to let patients express their opinions. Especially for unhappy patients, you need to give them a way to express their dissatisfaction directly with your practice or with the medical group. Ensure you and your staff genuinely listen to the complaints and offer potential solutions for patients so that they feel they're being taken care of. And finally, use the patient feedback to improve areas of the organization that need improvement so the same issues do not continue to recur. To give you an idea of how an automated patient service recovery process, let's take a look at how we do it here at RepuGen. The RepuGen process works by sending patients a survey to rate their experience directly after their visit. Within that survey, the patient has the capability to leave any feedback about what went right or what went wrong with their visit. Then the practice will receive notifications of any unhappy patients that rate negatively on the survey, and they'll be able to see their feedback. This is known as a closed loop system, where you have the ability to reach out to the unhappy patient to discuss their negative experience and try to rectify the situation. The practice will have the ability to add notes and resolutions for every negative experience so that you can keep track of your recovery progress, pinpoint common issues, and retain patients. The advantage of using such a software lies in monitoring the feedback immediately and analyzing the overall sentiment that's coming from your patients. For instance, you'll be able to easily see what areas need to be addressed at your practice, whether it's the doctor, front desk, billing, etc., and then you'll be able to make changes there to make improvements. Now, I quickly want to go ahead and walk through an overview of the RepuGen process so you guys get a better understanding of how exactly this all works. So what I did is I just pulled my screen opened to that survey that I was just talking about. So basically, this is the way that RepuGen does it. We send out a survey to patients after they had a visit with your practice. It's just a one-question survey. It's completely customizable, and you can really decide what question you want to ask. But the idea is to figure out how their experience went with their practice and for them to rate their experience on a scale of either 0 through 10 or 1 to 5. So let's say for today's example, I was a patient and I just thought the wait time at this particular practice was just much too long. So I'm going to rate my experience a 3 on this scale. What's going to happen here is I'm able to give any feedback about why my experience went wrong. So I'm going to vent my frustrations here, and I'm just going to say that the wait time was too long. Now what's going to happen as soon as I submit this comment, it's going to be sent directly to whomever at the practice is going to be dealing with this particular location so that they can see that patient's negative feedback, and they're going to be able to see it directly within an email. So I have an example of the email that they would receive here. Basically, anyone at your practice that you set up to receive these notifications for specific providers, locations, etc., can receive this. And here's what it looks like. Negative rating received. I'm being told that there was a particular patient who had a negative rating. And I can click here to see more information on this particular patient's rating. So I see their name, their contact information, and their negative comment was that there was just a long wait time. So myself as the manager who's going to be, focusing on this patient service recovery loop, I can take this time to go ahead and either pick up the phone and call the patient to rectify their experience and address what went wrong. And then I can add any notes about how that particular call went here. And I can also mark my outreach status. So let's say I was able to get in touch with this patient And I let them know that this particular day, wait times were longer than usual, and it's something that doesn't happen all the time. But the practice is going to be taking some time to look into it to figure out how we can avoid issues like this occurring in the future. What I can do is I can go ahead and mark my outreach status as completed and leave a note about how the particular conversation went. And then I can go ahead and submit my results once I'm done. There's also other options for outreach as well. In progress, let's say I was going to go and I wasn't able to get in touch with the patient and I left them a voicemail. That's why I can mark this as in progress. Or maybe I've been trying to reach this patient a few times and I haven't been able to get in touch with them. That's when I can go ahead and mark it as closed. So once I go ahead and submit this, that's really the end of the feedback loop here for this particular manager. Then if we go ahead and log into the RepuGen dashboard, this is just a quick overview of our dashboard and kind of what you would see when you log in. This is a demo account. So you'll be able to see all of your negative responses in this particular report here. So this shows you all of those negative ratings that came in from the survey and how your practice is recovering them or how they are initiating and completing that service recovery process. So for the particular time range, you'll be able to see the number of negative responses that came in, how many need attention or how many are still awaiting your staff to reach out to them, on average, how long it's taking your staff to reach out to the particular patients and rectify their experiences, how many are in progress, closed, and completed. So if we scroll down here, you can see the specific patient contact information. It's blurred here since this is the demo account, but you'll be able to see the score that they left on that survey, what their negative comment was, and how the manager is actually addressing that with that particular manager's comment that they were able to leave, again, directly within that email that they received. So this process makes it really easy where your managers are able to go ahead and reach out to them directly without having to log into RepuGen, but you can kind of manage and track everything from here. You're also able to see what this outreach status is and who exactly the provider and practice manager location and all that additional information here. With this particular process at RepuGen, we did a study and we found that 80% of the patients that had a negative experience after this process was being implemented are now being retained and recovered by the practice. So the final metric you see on this particular performance snapshot is the recovery efforts ROI. And basically what this is saying is that we're assuming that of the patients that are being completed, you were able to recover 80% of them according to our study. We also give you the capability to set an average value, average lifetime value of the patient, so that this particular metric becomes more on par with what your actual recovery efforts ROI are. So basically, we calculate it by taking the number of completed patients by that 80% by the average lifetime value, and you're able to see really what this process is doing for your recovery efforts and what your return on your investment is for doing this particular process. So that's just a quick overview of how RepuGen does it. Again, a software like this just really helps to automate the process and make it a lot more seamless. But you are able to do this process manually as well, or even send out emails manually on your end in order to create a process like this. It is just really important to go ahead and have some sort of service recovery process implemented so that you're able to obtain those reputation, revenue, and retention benefits that we talked about today. All right, and just a little bit more about RepuGen. We don't only focus on service recovery. We are an all-inclusive reputation management platform that will streamline the recovery process we went through today to help you implement an effective patient service recovery program. We also offer services to assist with online reputation management, patient engagement, monitoring, and improving patient satisfaction, marketing solutions, and more. Everything is customizable, so really depending on what you're interested in, you can always reach out to us and we'd be happy to build you a custom plan. I do want to let you know that we currently have a promotion going on that offers a 90-day money-back guarantee. This means if you sign up for RepuGen and your online reputation is not improved within 90 days, you'll be entitled to a refund of all of your monthly fees. To take advantage of this promotion, you can email us at info@repugen.com. Again, that's info@repugen.com. It's right on the screen here. Or to learn more, you can visit our website at www.repugen.com. All right, and that is everything for today's webinar on Patient Service Recovery Web 101. Now that everything has been covered, I'll go ahead and open up the floor to some Q&A. If you have any questions, go ahead and submit it, and I will go through them. All right, so it looks like we do have one question so far. How can I get my staff to stay on board with a service recovery process? All right, so great question. The best way to ensure that your staff members stay on board with the service recovery process is by providing all the tools they need to handle common complaints, giving them the flexibility to handle more uncommon situations, and being present to assist if needed. With these three things, your staff will have more confidence when dealing with unhappy patients. And additionally, you'll want to implement a closed loop system like we talked about today that will easily allow you to track your staff's progress when it comes to service recovery. Really great question. All right, and another question just came into the chat. Do I actually need to call an unhappy patient? Great question. So once you've identified an unhappy patient at your organization, we do highly suggest reaching out to them by phone, as it will help establish a connection with your patient and let your patient know that you care about their situation enough to give them a call and allow you to showcase your empathy in listening to their negative experience. With that being said, it's up to you on how you contact your patients in the recovery process. You may know, for example, that your patients, really prefer to be texted about certain situations, maybe before you give them a call. So really whatever works best for your practice is going to be, the best practice for you. But we at RepuGen do recommend reaching out to them by phone. All right, and the next question is, how exactly can I use unhappy patients' feedback to improve my practice? Great question. So you can use unhappy patients' feedback to address and improve different aspects of your practice. And let's say, for example, you're seeing that you're receiving common complaints where you're finding that patients are oftentimes complaining about the front desk because patients feel that maybe they're too slow or they're not explaining the paperwork clearly. You can then use that feedback to figure out what's going on with the front desk. You can sit down with your front desk person and try to analyze the process that is currently in place and make any adjustments to streamline the front desk process and clarify, maybe the paperwork more easily. Your unhappy patient's feedback is really just a great way to understand the different aspects of your organization, especially the areas that you didn't even think needed adjustments. So you can really try to find, what these common complaints are and address them accordingly. All right, another question we have is, should I reach out to happy patients too? Great question. I know this webinar was focusing on really how you recover and retain those patients that did have a negative experience. So reaching out to happy patients definitely will not hurt. If a happy patient, left a positive online review on one of your public review sites, we do recommend responding to that review. You can simply say, thanks for the positive review, or get more in depth about, specifically, what you're grateful for. Again, this will show patients that you care about the relationships you're building at your organization. Also, if you have any positive feedback that's coming in through your survey, same thing, you can send the patient a text to thank you specifically for that feedback and let them know that their feedback is important to the practice. All right, we'll just give a couple more minutes for any other questions that might come in. All right, should I give a platform to my happy patients to voice their feedback as well? So great question. I know, again, we were focusing on the negative side of things, but hearing from happy patients is also a plus. As we know, the majority of healthcare practices patient bases are mostly happy patients. What we recommend is that you have happy patients that want to give their feedback. You have to let them, ask them to leave a review on Google, Healthgrades, or any other review site. This will let them explain their satisfaction with you and give prospective patients insight as to how your patient care is. Also, if you do implement a survey similar to the one that we went over with RepuGen's process, you do give the opportunity for all patients to voice their feedback. So it's not only for the patients that had an unhappy experience. If a patient were to say rate a 10 on that particular after visit survey, they could also leave feedback about why their experience went so right. And that's when we can go on and ask them to leave an online review on those sites like Google Health Grades, et cetera, and so on. I'll just give one more minute to see if anybody else has any other questions. All right, awesome. Well, it looks like that's all the questions for today. So thank you again, everyone, for attending today's webinar. If you do come up with any other questions or you're interested in learning more, feel free to email us at info@repugen.com or check out our website at repugen.com. All right, thank you again so much and have a great rest of your day.